The lake isn't on any tourist maps. Locals don't fish there, no camps, no trails, just ice. But every year, the same day, the same hour, it cracks. Not outward, like pressure breaking free, but inward, like something pulls from below. This is where they said it first came out. Not walking, not crawling, climbing, and the ones who saw it, they don't talk anymore. But I found one who wrote it down, and what she described was not a creature. It was a mirror, one that smiles before you do. In Volume 2, I'll take you deeper, into sealed bunkers, abandoned ranger posts, and a plane that crashed in the sky, because something followed it there. What's happening in Alaska isn't new, and it's not alone. This is MindFuel. Volume 2 begins now, and it remembers you. 3 days after I left the dunes of Kobuk Valley, I followed a cold trail northwest, into a ridge that the maps call Denlin's Break, though no one in the ranger station could tell me who Denlin was. There, built into a slope just above treeline, stood the skeletal remains of a firewatch tower. Collapsed in on itself from rot and time, half the stairs gone, windows cracked, paint peeled until the timber looked like dry skin. It hadn't been used in over a decade. The files said it had been abandoned after a supply chain failure. But I'd already learned to read between the lines of bureaucratic language. Supply chain failure meant the team inside had stopped responding, and whatever was found afterward wasn't fit to be put on paper. What was never mentioned in the incident summary was the journal. I found it buried beneath a panel of warped flooring inside what was left of the radio room. Its cover was stiff, deer leather, stitched by hand, stained with oil and watermarks. Inside, the pages were packed with frantic scrawl. Ink pressed so hard into the paper it had bled through in places. The entries were signed by H. Rourke, one of the tower's last assigned techs. And as I read through his words, I felt that same tightness behind the ribs I'd felt back at Site Delta, like the air was pressing in, trying to listen over my shoulder. The first entries were simple. Notes on cloud cover, wind directs in D, fire danger level. But then came the line that shifted everything. Don't answer the radio. It's not them anymore. I read it twice, 3 times, then turned the page. The tone of the journal spiraled from routine to desperation almost instantly. He wrote about his partner, a woman named Elise, who had begun sleepwalking after the second week alone in the tower. She stood outside the cabin from 2 to 4 a.m., barefoot, never moved, eyes open, didn't blink. One morning, he found her standing on the ledge of the upper balcony with her head tilted back, listening. When he asked what she was doing, she said, "The snow has a heartbeat tonight." That entry was dated March 14th, 2009. The following week, his notes became erratic. Grammar fell apart. Words started showing up out of order. Then he wrote, Elise started speaking backward, not gibberish. Actual reversed phrases. I recorded it, played it in reverse. She was repeating the same sentence over and over. It's already inside. By now I was reading with gloves on, not because of the cold, but because the paper felt wrong. Like it held onto warmth a little too long, like it remembered being touched. The pages toward the end were torn, streaked with dirt or maybe blood. One entry said, "Snow falls straight through the tower now. Doesn't touch the floor, just disappears. But I can still hear it landing." Then, days later, the sky keeps flashing at night. No sound, just light, like something huge is moving above the clouds, like the sun is blinking. But the final entry chilled me in a way nothing else had so far. Scrawled in thicker pen, jagged, nearly tearing the paper. "The snow talks. Don't talk back." I sat there for a long time, journal in my lap, tower creaking softly in the wind. I don't know what I expected to feel. Maybe pity, maybe horror. But what I felt was something quieter, colder, like I just read something I wasn't supposed to survive. I carried the journal out of the tower, and as I stepped into the snow, my radio, dead for 2 days, crackled to life. Just static at first. Then a voice. Faint. Warped. It was my voice. Saying the same thing I'd said when I first left base camp 3 weeks ago. Channel check. This is Dalton. Testing range. Then silence. Then laughter. But not mine. I dropped the radio into the snow and kept walking. I didn't answer it, because I remembered the warning. Don't answer the radio. It's not them anymore. I still have the journal, and I still check the last page sometimes, because sometimes I think the ink looks fresher than I remember, like someone's been updating it, writing from the other side. In Chapter 6, we visit a glacial cave system used by researchers back in the 1980s. The cave was sealed for structural concerns, but a new melt has revealed its entrance again, and what I found inside shouldn't have been possible, because one of the things in the photographs was smiling, and it was smiling at me. Subscribe to MindFuel now. This isn't folklore. This isn't creepypasta. These are records, left behind by those who saw too much and said too little. And every chapter brings us closer to the one question I'm still afraid to ask. What if the ones who vanished weren't lost? What if they were changed? And after I left the Firewatch Tower, I kept the radio off. For a while. It wasn't fear, not exactly. More like reluctance. A kind of dread that wraps around your decisions, turns them quiet. Because once you hear your own voice come through the static, saying something you never said, you start treating silence like safety. But that safety doesn't last long out here. Not in Alaska's interior. Not when the air listens. 3 days later, I was camped at the base of Mount Shuvak, close to where a group of hikers vanished in 2013. No remains, no gear, just a tent, torn open from the inside, and a distress beacon that never stopped pinging until someone reached it. That night, I turned the radio back on, not to transmit, just to listen. Static at first, thick, like wet snow pressed up against a speaker, then a pop, a break in the signal, and then a voice, weak, female, maybe late teens. Hello? Anyone there? I think I'm lost. My heart froze. The voice was distorted, like it had been stretched, flattened, and reassembled too many times. But it was clear enough to make out. If you're out there, please. It took our faces. It wears our faces. Mine, too. Help me. It has my face now, I responded. I said my name, my coordinates, asked who she was, asked how many were with her. The signal cut. Dead. Instant. I tried cycling frequencies. Nothing. Just snow and silence. I thought I'd imagined it, an echo in my own exhausted mind, until the next night. I'd moved to a higher ridge for better signal range. Midway through the night, the radio came back online by itself. No beep, no static, just a single voice. This one male, calm, matter of fact. We're still walking, not sure how long. The sky's different now. I didn't recognize the voice, but I recognized the message. It matched the transcript of a hiker who vanished in 1998, word for word. But that message had never been broadcast publicly. I knew that because I had the original SAR report, and the voice logs were sealed. So how was the voice now coming through my radio? How was it exact? I asked the radio who it was. It went silent again. The next morning, I made the mistake of testing it. I asked, "Who are you?" Silence. I asked, "What do you want?" Silence. Then I asked, "Where are you?" And this time, The voice came back, but it didn't answer the question. It just whispered, "Call." My name, not shouted, not frantic, whispered as if it was standing inches from the receiver. That night I didn't sleep. I sat up in the dark with the radio in my lap. Every few hours it crackled to life. Different voices, different eras. One man crying, one child singing a lullaby from the 1940s. One woman, her voice brittle like glass, repeating, "There were 7 of us." Now, there's only the one that smiles. Each time I asked a question, it went silent. But each time I stayed quiet, the voices kept coming. Like the silence was the password. Like the moment I stopped trying to understand, they came closer. Then, just before dawn, the radio turned on by itself. No prompt, no transmission, just one long, slow inhale, followed by my voice. Not from a recording, not from any clip I've made, but my voice saying, "I don't think he knows we're already inside." I shut the radio off, buried it 2 feet into the snow, marked the spot, packed my gear, and didn't look back. The problem is, since that night, I've still heard it. No speaker, no battery, just that same soft, static-washed whisper. Sometimes behind me, sometimes when I'm alone in the tent, always saying the same thing. Cal. Cal. Like, it's checking to make sure I'm still here. Like it's trying to remind me of something I've forgotten. And maybe that's the real danger out here. Not just being watched, but being remembered by something that shouldn't know your name. In Chapter 7, I follow the trail to a remote glacial cave, long sealed off since 1984. But the deeper I go, the more I realize. Some of the walls down there aren't made of ice. They're made of something older, and they listen back. Subscribe to MindFuel, because you're not just following a mystery anymore. You're starting to hear it too. And trust me, once it says your name, it never forgets you. The farther north you go, the less the woods behave like forest. It stops feeling like landscape and starts feeling like territory. Something claimed, guarded, not by people, not by names on maps, but by whatever was here long before any of us knew how to build fences. I'd crossed a ridge west of Hatcher Pass, headed toward a stretch of pines locals call Red Hollow. No trails, no hunting, just stories. They say the trees there bleed. Not in metaphor, literally. I thought it was superstition. But the ranger I interviewed in Fairbanks looked me dead in the eye and said, "If the sap smells sweet, you're safe. If it smells like meat, turn around." So I packed light and hiked in solo. First day, no signs, just quiet. Second day, I smelled it before I saw it. Thick, damp, like old copper left in the sun. And beneath that, rot. Not decomposition, not death, decay, the kind that sticks to the back of your teeth. That's when I saw the first tree. Birch, maybe 40 years old. A long split down the bark like something had clawed it open. But it wasn't dry. It wept, dark, red sap, oozing slow like molasses, but thicker, not sticky, more like warm syrup mixed with grease. And the smell. God, the smell. Up close, it hit hard. Meat gone soft. Fat turned to jelly. I touched the sap with the end of a pen. It moved. Not dripped. Moved. It shifted away from the pen like it was pulling back. I marked the spot on GPS and kept moving. 5 minutes later, I found another tree. Same damage, same sap, then another, then 5. A whole line of them, each split open just enough to weep, all leading in the same direction. I followed it. Against better judgment, I followed the bleeding trees deeper into the forest until the smell got so thick it coated the inside of my mask. That's when I saw the trail. Blood. No mistaking it. Not sap this time, not red algae. Blood. Thin streaks, not puddles. like something had been dragged through the underbrush. But there were no prints, no disturbed leaves, no tracks, just the smear. It led through a choke of spruce and stopped at a clearing. I've never seen anything like it. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of small animal skulls. Perfectly clean, not weathered. Arranged in a perfect circle around a small ring of rocks. No bodies, no fur, just the skulls. And in the middle, a human hand, severed clean at the wrist, palm up, fingers curled slightly. It hadn't been there long, maybe hours. No rot, no frostbite, still warm. I stepped closer, trying not to disturb the arrangement. That's when I realized every skull was facing inward, toward the hand, toward the center, like they'd been positioned that way, like they were watching it, or maybe waiting for it to move. I took 3 photos, then my camera died. Full battery, gone. Cold shutdown. I tried the backup, same thing. Then I heard it. A low hum, not mechanical, not wind, like something was using the air itself to send a warning. I backed away slowly. When I turned around, I saw one more tree, different than the others. The bark wasn't split, it was peeled, stripped in a spiral from top to root, and carved into the trunk, deep and jagged, were 5 words: "This isn't yours to see." I left the clearing without touching anything else. 2 miles out, I looked back, and the blood trail was gone. The trees were whole again. No sap, no smell, like the woods had sealed behind me, like I was never meant to find that place at all. I've reported none of this to local authorities. Not because I don't believe it's a crime scene, but because I don't believe it's part of this world's laws anymore. Whatever left that hand, it wasn't done with it. It left it for someone. In Chapter 8, I tracked down a glacial cave system that was sealed by the military in 1984. A place where the ice doesn't reflect your face. It reflects something else. And one of the photos taken inside, it shows me standing there. But I wasn't in Alaska that year. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because the forest doesn't just hide things, it curates them. And whatever's inside it wants you to know it's watching. There's a kind of quiet under the ice that doesn't exist anywhere else. No birds, no insects, not even the wind, just pressure. Ancient, steady pressure. Pressing down like the earth wants you to forget what's buried underneath it. I was 20 miles northwest of Lake Clark when I found the entrance. Locals never mentioned a glacier that deep in the valley, but a thermal anomaly on satellite caught my attention, an unnatural warmth bleeding through the permafrost, concentrated around a rock outcrop marked as inactive since 1984. What the maps didn't show was the seam running down the center, an old, narrow fault in the ice that had recently widened, likely from melt shifting the structure. I didn't plan to go in, I just wanted to document it. But the cold has a way of convincing you that you're being pulled. I rappelled about 15 feet before the drop opened into a tunnel. Glacial blue, smooth, untouched. No footprints, no tool marks, just corridors, twisting downward in a way that didn't feel natural. Not shaped by time, shaped by intent. The walls began to change after the 3rd turn. Ice gave way to a darker sediment, compressed stone with layers of quartz and something I couldn't identify. That's when I found the carvings, etched deeply into the walls, some maybe 12 to 14 feet tall, figures. Not human, not animal. Bodies stretched and thin, limbs elongated like drawn wire. No heads, no eyes, just necks that ended in nothing. And surrounding them, circles, spirals, rows of sharp lines radiating outward like sound. I photographed everything, slowly, carefully. But my hands had started shaking, and not from the cold. Something about the shapes triggered a kind of vertigo. Not dizziness, disorientation. like I was being watched by something with no eyes, or like I was being recognized. I followed the tunnel deeper, found another chamber, and then a third. This one was larger, dome-shaped. The walls were polished smooth, so smooth I could see my reflection. At least, I thought it was mine. In the far end of the chamber, the floor sloped down into a trench filled with clear, compacted ice. Embedded in it, rows of depressions, human-sized, perfectly uniform. Each one shaped like a person lying on their back, arms to the side. But they were all empty, like whatever had been there had gotten up. I counted 27. 27 indentations in the ice, untouched by age or melt. Each one pristine, sealed into the glacier like a catalog. But where the heads should have been, the impressions just stopped. No skulls, no shape, just a clean break, like whoever or whatever was placed in those slots had never had a head to begin with. I knelt to take a sample of the ice, but as I brushed frost from the surface, I saw something beneath one of the indentations. A reflection, not mine, not mirrored. It blinked. I dropped the tool and backed out fast, boots sliding across the stone. Behind me, the walls began to echo. Not with my breath, not my movement, but a whisper. A sound I hadn't heard since the radio started speaking. Cal. I don't remember climbing out. I just remember seeing daylight and crawling toward it like it was alive. I left every tool behind, every sample, but not the memory, and not the photo. When I got back to base, I checked the last picture I'd taken before descending the final slope. And there, faint in the edge of the frame, was a silhouette, standing at the mouth of the trench, long limbs, no head, and one arm raised, as if it were waving. In Chapter 9, I returned to a ranger outpost that's been off-grid since 2016. Everyone there left without a trace. No signs of struggle, no forced exits, just their clothes, folded neatly on the porch, and a journal with a final line. We weren't alone in the dawn light. We were counted. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because we're not just uncovering ancient history anymore. We're stepping into what's been waiting, and it's not done waking up. Some disappearances don't stay disappeared. Every so often, someone comes back. A hiker wanders into a ranger station 5 years after they were declared dead. A fisherman shows up outside his old cabin, still wearing the coat they found torn in half at the riverbank. But something's wrong. They smile too long, or forget their own dog's name, or blink less than they used to. And when their loved ones ask them where they've been, they say they can't remember, or worse, they say they never left. I was back in the village of New Halen, near the rim of Lake Clark, following up on a case that had never made the news. Locals called him Marcos Iteca, mid-30s, strong, the kind of guy who'd lived off the land his whole life. He went missing in late 2019. Snowstorm hit fast while he was checking trap lines near the far tree line. They found his sled a week later. No blood, no prints, just the dogs still harnessed, silent, tails tucked, like they'd seen something that didn't move like a man. Marcos was declared dead in 2020. His family held a funeral, built a cairn, buried a lock of his hair and what was left of his knife handle. And then, 6 months ago, he came back, walked out of the tree line like no time had passed. Same boots, same coat, not a scratch on him, but he didn't recognize anyone. Not his mother, not his sister, not even the house he grew up in. When they asked his name, he paused, then said, "I think it's Marcos, but it doesn't sound right." He couldn't describe where he'd been. Said it was cold, but not in the way he remembered. Said he'd seen trees breathing. Said something was counting his teeth. I met with old Mariak, one of the village elders. She didn't mince words. "That's not who we buried," she said, "and that's not who came back." I asked her what she meant. She looked me dead in the eye and told me about the tall things. That's what the oldest stories call them, the ones with no heads, the ones that don't eat. They learn. She said, if they see your face, really see it, they can wear it. I asked how she could be sure this wasn't just trauma. Grief. She shook her head. The real Marcos was left-handed. This one uses his right. He blinks too slow. And I watched him cut meat yesterday. He carved in spirals. She didn't have to explain what that meant. I'd seen the spirals too. In the cave, on the trees, carved into places no human hand had any business reaching. I watched him from a distance. The man who may have once been Marcos. He moved through the vedo, someone wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, never seemed cold, never seemed hungry, always smiling, but never quite at the right time. I saw him once at the lake, just standing there, not fishing, not walking, just watching his reflection. For hours. That night, I stayed in a cabin on the edge of the village. Woke up just before 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside. Slow, careful. I didn't turn on a light. Just sat there in the dark, listening as the footsteps circled the cabin once, twice, then stopped at the window. I didn't move, didn't breathe, and after a few minutes, they walked away. But before they left, something tapped the glass. Not like a knock, like a finger tracing the outline of my face through the pane. The next morning, I found no prints, but the frost on the window had melted, in the shape of a human face. Not mine, just close enough. That afternoon I spoke to a second elder, Toma, one of the last fluent speakers of a regional dialect no longer taught in schools. I asked him what happened to people like Marcos. People who returned, but came back wrong. He said, "They're just mirrors now. You look long enough. You start to see something behind you, looking back." I left the village that night, and when I looked back one last time, I saw Marcos standing in the same spot by the lake, still watching his reflection, still smiling. In Chapter 10, we visit a crash site in the Alaskan Triangle that's been buried for decades, until a recent rock slide uncovered the wreckage. No black box, no passenger remains. But inside the cockpit, someone had scratched a message into the ceiling. It followed us into the sky. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because out here, in the silence between the trees, your face is a mask they're waiting to borrow. You get used to aircraft noise in the wild. It's a rare comfort, a sound that doesn't belong to the forest, a reminder there's still a line connecting you to civilization. But sometimes, that sound doesn't mean rescue. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything at all. In July, an avalanche was reported on the southern slope of Mount Aniakchak. An experienced climbing team triggered it during their descent. 5 were missing, presumed buried. A rescue chopper was dispatched from a Coast Guard station in Kodiak. Designation, Eagle 9. It reached the search zone and stopped. And for the next 3 days, it didn't land, didn't move, just hovered 50 feet above the tree line. Engines steady, blades moving, but never touching down, never responding. I interviewed one of the spotters from a secondary team on the ridge across from it. He said, "We thought they were waiting for signal confirmation, but when we radioed, nothing, just static." On day 2, thermal imaging was run. No signatures, no heat, no life, no one inside. The cockpit showed nothing. Day 3, they tried to flag it manually. One ranger hiked below with a signal panel, waving it back and forth under open sky. The chopper didn't react, just hovered, constant, almost patient, until dusk. That's when the power dropped. No warning. The rotors slowed, the body tilted, and then it crashed. Not a violent impact, not a fireball, Just a slow, almost deliberate descent into the valley floor, like it had given up. Recovery teams arrived 12 hours later. The wreckage was mostly intact. No pilot, no co-pilot, no medics, no gear, no seats, just antlers, dozens of them, stacked like driftwood, and packed into the cockpit floor, dirt, thick, black earth, where there shouldn't have been any. The kind of soil that takes centuries to form. Soil that belongs deep, under layers of frost and stone, not in a machine meant for the sky. One investigator, who asked to remain anonymous, told me this. It's like the thing flew up, but landed somewhere else, somewhere that isn't here. And when it came back down, it didn't bring the people back, just what was left of where they'd been. The serial number on the tail boom of Eagle 9 was charred, melted, but records confirmed something even stranger. That call sign, Eagle 9, hadn't been used since 1997, and the pilot listed on the mission log, he died in 2004, buried, cremated, and yet, somehow, his name showed up in the flight manifest again, signed, dated, and typed using a machine that hasn't existed in 20 years. Nobody claimed the wreckage. Within weeks, it was removed under contract by a non-governmental entity, one that had no logo, no name, no official record. But they arrived with exact coordinates, and they took only the dirt. There's something about the sky in Alaska, something about the way it listens. It's not always the ground that takes people. Sometimes it's the air. And whatever's above us isn't just watching, it's collecting. In Chapter 11, I return to a frozen lake that's been cracking in symmetrical patterns every year since 1965. But this time, the ice didn't crack outward. It cracked in. And under the surface, something was waiting with open arms. Subscribe to MindFuel, because what goes missing out here doesn't always vanish. Sometimes it hovers, waiting to be seen again. And sometimes it never lands at all. I thought I had more time. Thought if I moved slow enough, stayed cautious enough, I could observe without being seen. But the thing about this wilderness is, it doesn't obey your pacing. When it's ready, it steps forward. And when it does, all you can do is watch. I was hiking past Stonehook Basin, a narrow stretch near the old mining tunnels west of the Kobuk Dunes. Locals don't go there, not because of superstition, but because of instinct. Birds avoid it. The dogs won't cross it. And the trees, they lean away from it like they're recoiling from something the rest of us still pretend isn't there. I'd seen the signs before. Frost that forms in handprints. Bones arranged in loops, untouched by scavengers. Audio that doesn't record what you heard, but something else entirely. But I hadn't seen it. Not until then. The trail curved just beyond a tree split by lightning. I remember that detail because the bark was still smoldering from a storm 3 days earlier. And just past that, at the base of a shallow hill, was the thing I've been chasing without knowing I was being hunted in return. It stood motionless, center of a clearing, tall, impossibly tall, too thin to be a man. Arms that didn't hang, they draped like wet rope. The body was black, not dark, black. So black it absorbed light. Edges too soft to be real, like shadow pretending to be mass. And over its face, if you could call it that, was a mask. Not carved, not stylized, but human. Someone's real face, worn like leather. I didn't breathe, didn't move, but the trees did. Every tree around it tilted away, their trunks bending slightly, their leaves shivering without wind. Not just like they feared it, like they recognized it. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes, but it never moved, never stepped forward, just stood, wearing that face like a suggestion, something meant to resemble us. Just enough. Then, I blinked. Just once, and it was gone. I stumbled back to camp just before sundown, shaking, mouth dry. Every sound seemed muffled like I was underwater. I didn't sleep. Just lay in the tent, hand gripped around the zipper like that was going to do anything. At some point, I must have passed out. I woke up before dawn, cold, stiff, and holding my camera. I didn't remember reaching for it. Didn't remember turning it on. But it was in my hand, pointed toward the flap of the tent. Battery low, memory card full. I reviewed the footage. It was dark, unsteady. A few frames showed the clearing I'd stood in the day before, and then, at the very end of the clip, a shape, barely visible, in the tree line, watching, not walking, not approaching, just standing. The mask more visible this time, pale, stretched, features blank, with just the hint of a smile too wide for a human mouth. I checked the metadata. The timestamp said it was recorded at 3:17 a.m. I had no memory of leaving the tent, but the dirt on my boots said otherwise. I don't know if I walked there or was brought. I don't know if what I saw wanted me to record it or wanted me to see it again, in the edit, in the replay, on loop, a reminder that it saw me too. In Chapter 12, I try to leave Alaska. I pack up, take the southern trail toward the last ferry out. But the road doesn't lead where it should, and I start to see signs with my own face on them, tacked to trees, scrawled in red chalk. And they all say the same thing. Welcome back, Cal. Subscribe to MindFuel, because now we've seen it. And if the stories are true, it knows we're watching, and it's waiting for the moment we stop. Some places you find by mistake. Others feel like they were meant to be found, like they were left out in the cold just long enough for someone like me to wander in, thinking I was discovering something buried. But the truth is, it was never buried. It was sealed. South of the Brooks Range, tucked into a dead zone of map coordinates where no trails, no satellite signals, no official records overlap, there's a scar in the snow. It doesn't look like much. A gentle slope, a mound of stone covered in ice. But up close, you'll see it. A door, steel, frost-sealed, marked with no unit name, no insignia, just 5 letters scratched into the paint by something not using tools. Back. I didn't plan to open it, but my radio died. Compass spun. And the wind. The wind carried my own voice back to me. I had no choice. I descended. The hatch groaned like something exhaled from below. I stepped into an old military outpost, the kind they swore didn't exist anymore. Concrete walls. Long corridors. Frost so thick, the lights inside looked like distant moons behind clouded glass. And it was dead silent. Not abandoned. Hollowed. I found the control room about 30 meters in. Rows of monitors, dark. Rust on every console, and the floor, slick with something black and glassy, like obsidian had wept and frozen into itself. On the main desk was a tape recorder, still powered, still blinking. Beside it, a folder marked Operation White Howl. The first page was a briefing dated 1972. Objective: environmental anomaly recovery and biological containment. Subject listed only as Entity 0. The text beneath that had been redacted, but when I tilted the page against the light, I could just make out the ink beneath. Subject mimics cognition, voice, memory, do not engage. Another document, a typed log, described the capture. They found it standing in a crater of melted ice, surrounded by 14 caribou, all dead, not eaten, not injured, just dead. And all of them had turned to face it before they collapsed. The log said it didn't speak at first. Then it started repeating the name of one of the soldiers, over and over, not like it learned it. like it remembered it. I flipped to the final entry. Half the ink had been blurred, but what I could read chilled me in a way the cold never had. It doesn't need to escape. It learns what to become. Every time someone looks at it, it gets better at being them. Whatever we brought in, it was already here. That's when the tape recorder clicked, and a voice started playing. My voice, not from today, from 2 weeks ago, from a log I recorded near the crater. Whatever it is, I think it saw me. Then another voice cut in. Same pitch, same cadence, but not mine. Too calm, too practiced. It said, "If this is playing, it got out." I don't remember running. I remember the cold hitting my lungs like fire. I remember my boot slipping on the steel rung of the exit ladder. I remember sunlight, weak and gold, cutting through the snow like a wound. But most of all, I remember hearing footsteps beside mine as I ran, perfectly timed, perfectly matched. And when I turned around at the ridge, I saw myself, standing just outside the bunker, watching me go. It didn't follow. It didn't have to. They tried to contain it, tried to test it, study it, label it. But you can't trap something that doesn't want to escape. You can't understand something that learns who you are the moment you speak its name. That was the last entry in my Alaska field journal. Everything after this, I keep off tape. But if you've seen me in the footage, if you've heard my voice in this episode, I want you to ask yourself one thing. How do you know it's still me? Subscribe to MindFuel. Because the things you chase in the dark, they're chasing something deeper in you. And once they know who you are, they never forget. I made it out, or at least I thought I did. 47 miles on snowmobile, 2 more on foot, frostbite on 3 fingers, still no feeling in 1 foot. But I had the footage, the camera, the audio logs, the journal from the lost team, and that last photo. Proof. Not just of what's hiding in the Alaskan interior, but what's been here long before us. I reached the outskirts of Anchorage before the road was cut off. 2 black SUVs, no plates. Government-grade frost on the windows. Too clean for the weather. I didn't run. They were already waiting. They didn't say a word at first. Just took my gear, popped open the memory card, didn't even blink at the footage. The lead one, late 40s, slate-gray buzz cut, finally spoke. He looked at me and said, "Nothing you found matters, if no one's alive to believe it." I asked who he worked for. He just smiled, a little too wide, and he told me, "You were never in Lake Clark. You never crossed the Kobuk. And, if anyone asks, you had a breakdown in the woods. Stress, exposure, hallucinations." Then he handed me back a different camera, my name labeled on the side, but none of the footage inside was mine. I should have stopped there. I should have gone home, let the silence swallow it all. But something doesn't let go once it's seen you. A week later, I started editing the backup footage I'd stashed in the air vent of my tent. I synced the audio, cleaned the visuals. Then I played the dash cam from the night I fled the bunker, and that's when I saw it. The snow-covered road, the trees, the frozen trail behind me. And then, just for a second, a shape in the back seat, blurred by glass, sitting still, motionless, a head tilted at the wrong angle, no breath, no fog on the window, and in the reflection, my face staring back at me. But I wasn't looking in the mirror. I was driving. That footage leaked. And no matter how many times they try to scrub it, reposts go up faster than takedowns. The more you slow it down, the more you realize it was never behind me. It was already inside. I don't go north anymore. I don't hike alone. And I don't look at my reflection after dark. But if you're listening to this, if you made it through every chapter, every clue, every whisper frozen in the trees, then you've seen what they buried, what they tried to label, suppress, deny. And now, it's seen you too. If you thought Alaska was just cold and empty, you're wrong. What lives out there isn't finished with us. It's moving, and it's learning. Next up on MindFuel, Yosemite has a new predator, and it's learning how to hunt in daylight.